Hello, we're joined on this webinar by longtime and experienced marketer Ron Sheets. The briefest background on Ron. He became an entrepreneur at the early age of 13 when he first sold tickets for his magic show to neighborhood parents and kids. By 19, he was the top salesperson for an independent television production company in Cleveland, Ohio. There, he was responsible for managing and producing projects for Fortune 100 and 500 companies. His work has been recognized as some of the best marketing and received many prestigious marketing awards. In 2006, Ron was the Senior Executive Vice President of Marketing for the 8th largest private residential mortgage lender in the U.S. They were listed as one of the fastest-growing companies in both Inc. and Entrepreneur magazine 3 consecutive years running. He was involved with the marketing of one of the largest private erectile dysfunction clinics, taking the company from $12 to $37 million a year in revenue in just 18 months. He's no stranger to independent dentists. In 2004, he started working with his family dentist, marketing her 2-chair private practice, and in 2015, she sold her practice and retired in Tampa, Florida. Today, she still practices dentistry with the United States Army, from which she retired as a captain after serving during Desert Shield and Storm in 1990 and 91. Ron has worked with many top celebrities and marketing gurus. He's a trusted advisor to the top dental advisors in the country, and he's authored 3 Amazon best-selling dental marketing books and guest-authored in many others. On this webinar, Ron will discuss an overlooked source of revenue for the independent dentist.
So let's jump right in. Ron, there are currently 61 dentists for every 100,000 people in the U.S. That's about 201,000 dentists. They're all producing various levels of production. What makes you an expert on dental practice marketing?
Well, again, thank you, Larry, for letting me be here and talking with your audience. And that's a great question because I myself am not a dentist. But first, what I do doesn't get in the way of anything that the practice is currently doing in their marketing or advertising. Most of the work that I do with practices is for their internal marketing rather than the direct outreach to attract prospective patients. You know, there are enough experts in the dental space to help dentists find new patients. So really, to use a Disney term, I plus a practice's marketing approach and its system. I'm not a substitute for it or a replacement for it. So I provide high-level tools that they can never afford to create on their own. I work within the culture of the practice. So what I craft and I create for a practice is unique because it's based on the practice's dentist or dentists, on the staff and the philosophy and the culture within the practice. So technically, I could work with 2 neighboring dentists in the same community, and what I would create for each will be unique. It will differentiate one from the other because each doctor and his or her practice is unique, and that's what patients really want. They're looking for a dentist and a practice that they can feel comfortable, safe, and cared for in. The second thing, as I said, I'm not a dentist. I'm a patient and a marketer. So I experience the same thing that patients do and are able to understand it from a marketing standpoint. In fact, my primary business is in interviewing dental patients and finding out what's most important to them in their search for and their experience with a dentist or a dental practice. I capture, and tell those dental stories in marketing. Again, mostly internal marketing that pluses what they're doing already. So it adds valuable differentiation. The key is not about communicating more of the same things that every other practice is communicating. It's about communicating what's important to the patient. The unfortunate thing that I have discovered is that dentists come out of dental school as highly skilled dentists, but business cripples. You know, they get very little education on the marketing side of it in school. All right, I find that dentists rely on trial and error and investing thousands and thousands of dollars in advertising, as well as with advisors to discover what does and doesn't work. So they spend a lot of time looking for the magic bullet in their advertising and marketing that can attract patients. Many struggle with fees and competition. So what I create and develop for practices is built on what works. It's communicating the practice's value from the patient's perspective. All right. So let's face it. It doesn't really matter, and this is of no dispersion to dentists and all the folks that are listening. It doesn't matter how skilled the dentist is. If we're not communicating the right message to the patient, we appear and sound like every other dental office.
Well, that's a really good point, Ron.
When we think about the communication, so I mentioned that, there are key components to every marketing and advertising message, one of which is, who do you want as a patient? That's an important thing. The message or the language in the messages is critical to attracting the right kind of patient to the practice. So there are a lot of people who are considering dentistry right now. There are those that can afford it, those that dentistry can be made affordable for, and those that can't afford it. Most practices spend a lot of their time and effort focused on the patients who can afford it right now. So we all want to close the treatment that we present to them right now. Unfortunately, that's not realistic thinking. It's also not realistic to think that if a patient doesn't accept treatment right now, that they're either going to go find it elsewhere cheaper or they're never going to do it at all.
Well, wait, let me ask you a question regarding the message.
Yeah.
Which do you think is more powerful, a positive or a negative message?
Larry, that's an excellent question. It's one that doctors don't really ask themselves when they're constructing their marketing. There's no doubt that patients want to feel good about their choices. They want to feel good about who they choose, but they also want to be optimistic about the outcomes of those choices. In fact, they want to be absolute certain about it. But there's overwhelming evidence that the negative emotions like fear, fear of loss, guilt, and failure motivate someone's actions more than painting pictures of the city on a hill where the sun always shines. I mean, this is verified repeatedly, year after year, product after product. So let me give you an example. You mentioned in the open regarding my large medical client, the erectile dysfunction company. They are in the business of fixing men's erectile dysfunctions, okay? And in our advertising, and I'm going to use them as an example because we spend a tremendous amount of money on a monthly basis in print, radio, and television. And we've run definitive split testing in all the advertising. So because they're in the business of fixing men's sex problems, we've run 2 consecutive messages and tested those. The messages contained in one of the ads was fix your sex life in 1 visit guaranteed. The other was discover what drug companies don't want you to know. Now, intellectually, you'd expect the first message to work better. It's the results that patients want. They want to fix their sex life. However, the second one, the negative message, the what drug companies don't want you to know, was 300% more effective.
Wow. Do you know why that is, Ron?
Well, sure. And just from following the data and talking to the people, we know that many men are looking to fix their problem, and they've tried any number of other methods to do this. So it's like weight loss. The average dieter tries between 55 and 130 diets in their lifetime. A man who has an erectile problem has likely tried any number of other possible solutions, including the little blue pill. And that little blue pill doesn't work for everybody. The negative message attracts the attention of these patients because there's more of them. So think about it. They've tried one solution after another. When they fail, they start believing the drug companies have let them down. Again, it's like dieters. They continue to search for the solution. With every failure, the patient becomes more motivated to find a solution. Just as there are men who are secretly seeking a solution one after another for their sensitive problem, there are a large number of people out there secretly seeking dentistry as a solution to their challenges. They're the ones that are online and they're looking and they're searching secretly. But nobody really wakes up one morning deciding to have implants, crowns, or bridges. They think about it a lot. And for many people, it's a dark place. So I try not to forget about this lesson. There's a lot of emotional copy in what I create that's about fear, guilt, shame, and emotional angst. There is a very deliberate effort to create a happy versus frustrated patient situation in which by their behavior, we're going to know them. Most of it isn't heavy-handed or harsh, but it's there.
Ron, I've worked with you a lot, and I know your stuff to be excellent. I understand you've created a new program for dentists. Would you mind telling us about it?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not going to go into a lot of this deeply because you covered it a bit on the front end with the introduction. I first became exposed to the challenges that independent dentists face by working with my own family dentist. It's what originally introduced me to you and big case marketing so many years ago. She was following big case marketing, and then one time heard me on a teleconference with you guys, and that's what started the conversation with her. So Dr. Manber Panu ran a 2-chair practice, as you indicated, and that was in a little town near Cleveland, Ohio, North Royalton, Ohio. And at every dental visit that I went to, for my own dental visit, her and my conversations always got around to business. And I remember asking her if there was any part of her practice that she could improve, what would it be? And I remember her telling me very vehemently, she said if she could get past or make better the attracting the patients and then getting patients to accept treatment. So I said to her, I said, so you mean the sales part of it? It was at that point I knew that really sales was a dirty word in dentistry. And that started my career in helping independent dentists. So one of the things that I analyzed from her practice was the process that the patient that I went through from the moment I scheduled an appointment through to treatment in the presentation and thereafter, because she did some cosmetic dentistry for me. So I really started to look at it as a patient's perspective with a marketer's eye. More recently, it's led me to conduct my own research with over 5,000 dentists who follow me. Now, when I say follow me, they either subscribe to my newsletters, they've bought any one of my books, or they may be private clients. So I'm going to use this to establish a baseline for our examples throughout this presentation. It also happens to correspond with a current practice that I'm working with and their numbers, and I'm going to share those. So we'll have evidence from an unbiased survey backed with a real practice's numbers. So of the 5,744 practices that I surveyed, I asked question number 1, how many new patients schedule an appointment per month in the practice? Now you can see from the graphic here that the average across all the practices polled was 26 new patients per month. That was the average. Now I know that we have some docs and some practices on the webinar with me now who are either higher or maybe lower. All right, you can see from the chart there as to what the range was. But we're going to use the number 26 because that was the average of all of those docs that were polled. Of the new patients that they scheduled to the appointment, how many got presented a comprehensive treatment? And in most of their cases, they told me there was about 100%. I have a dental practice that I'm working with right now that they're saying that they present to about 83%. But again, the average across ended up being really close to 100%. But then how many that didn't proceed with that treatment? So this is the lost or the undone treatment. It's a big opportunity missed in all practices. From the survey, from my survey, the average was 35%, or as shown here, 17 people put into treatment and 9 people were not. So 9 cases missed. Of the practices polled again, how many do follow up on those missed? And you can see from this chart, there's a lot of mixed responses, okay? More than 55% said yes, and then there's 45% that was a mix of maybe, it depends, no. So there's a really kind of a non-definitive there, and it's really unique to each practice because a follow-up could be considered a telephone call, could be a series of telephone calls. But as you're going to see, I'm addressing follow-up as something much more in-depth, much more scientific, much more systematic. So with all that groundwork laid, I want to walk through the traditional outdated process that most patients experience at a dental office. And for those that are on the call, you can kind of analyze and see if this is true in your office. So the first thing that happens is the dental practice advertises. They're advertising for a new patient. There's a cost involved with that. Now, this could be through pay-per-click advertising online, your website, direct mail, newspaper referrals, whatever it could be. You're trying to get a patient to respond. So when that patient responds, they set up an appointment. And oftentimes, the communication with that patient doesn't really begin, the relationship doesn't really begin until they come into their first appointment. Now, they may get a reminder about the appointment, but truly the relationship, the communication doesn't really start until the first appointment, where they're going to get an exam, a cleaning, may get an assessment, and you may present some kind of a treatment to them. After that appointment, or when they're given that treatment presentation, a case presentation is made to them, they're faced with a yes or no. Okay, are they going to move forward with treatment or not? And again, as I showed in that diagram, in that chart, about 9 people out of the 26 don't move forward. So this is the lost opportunity. And that's really when the follow-up should begin a true in-depth follow-up, because they're leaving the practice without having accepted treatment. Now, this is all complicated with what we're experiencing right now with COVID-19. Practices have been forced to involuntarily shut down their practices. And really, aside from emergency, not doing a whole heck of a lot of much. Practices aren't advertising, they're not marketing, but yet they're still trying to operate, and there's still expenses being accumulated and going out. The other question is what's happening with the patients. In large parts, the patients are being abandoned, and what's going to happen to them when the all clear is given. For a practice that does survive, and unfortunately the reality is that there are going to be some practices that don't survive. But when the practice opens up again, there's going to be a pent-up need of those patients. So there's going to be this abundance of recare work. Now, granted, the practice is around to do it, but it may not be the high-value, high-profitable, cases that the practice really needs to be able to survive on. I just heard a press conference with the governor of the state of Ohio, where I'm located at, and he revealed kind of a vulnerability that I have recognized, and I'm sure doctors recognize in their practices. And he used a term which I think is appropriate, and he called it delayed healthcare, which I think is what we're in and what we're experiencing right now, delayed healthcare. And what it really reveals is that about 80 to 90% of dentists' work, any kind of their case-related stuff, is elective. And that's where we're struggling with and need to really focus on, because we need to get more people saying yes to treatment. And lastly, when the all clear is given and practices are able to open up again and start serving patients, I'm betting on the fact that there's not a lot of practices that are going to have upfront money for marketing and advertising, but they're going to need money to operate. So we are, in that sense, in unprecedented times. Now let me kind of give you some real numbers from the practice that I'm working with that I think this relates to and will relate with a lot of our listeners. So I'm going to use the numbers from a real practice that I'm working with. Now I'm going to call that practice Traditionalville Family Dentistry, founded by Dr. John Smith. That's neither the real name of the practice or the doctor, though the numbers I'm going to share are real. So Dr. Smith's practice generates about 30 new patients per month. He presents 100% of treatment to new patients. They're given a yes or no situation. They either decide to go ahead with a treatment or they decide not to go ahead with treatment. Now, based on Dr. Smith's data, and this is his data based on what he tracks in his management software, his practice has about a 20% acceptance rate. The thing that improves that low conversion number is his per case value. So he's operating at about a $3,000 per case average. So if he closes 20% or 5 cases, he's generating about $15,000 in new production each month. However, that leaves 80% not accepting treatment. Now, to his credit, he's doing a follow-up system. He's got a follow-up system in his practice. And here's his follow-up system. It consists of 3 telephone calls. The first call happens 48 hours after the presentation's been given. The second call is 2 weeks out. The third call is 4 weeks out, and then nothing after that. Now, to his admission, the extent of the call, meaning the content of the call that they're making from the office to this patient, and what they're really asking is, hey, you had a treatment plan presented to you. Are you ready to proceed with that treatment? That's what they're really asking. What's really happening in that is we're asking a patient to make a new decision based on the same information that they already have. Now, the reality is that people don't readily change their minds. They do, however, make a new decision based on new information. So calling and asking a patient if they're ready to proceed is merely just asking them to make a new decision based on old information. My program is all about presenting new information, a new way of looking at things, hence giving the patient the opportunity for a new perspective, a new way of thinking about this treatment. It's creating a situation where they can make a new decision based on better positioning from you, a better argument. And as uncomfortable as it often is for many service providers to swallow, it's a better, more emotionally charged pitch, or if it's easier to digest, a better way of making your case. Now, let's get into the nuts and bolts. Let's look at the more advanced, sophisticated patient follow-up experience, one that uses the right communication with the right emotional and psychological triggers with patients at each step of their experience with the practice based on the relationship that's been developed. So as I walk through the smart patient follow-up system, you're going to see many of the same steps, but this time with key communication interjected at just the right points. So again, practice generates a lead. A patient contacts the practice, they schedule an appointment. Once they've scheduled an appointment, the communication begins. The patient receives what we'll call a choosing the right dentist package, which consists of a video and a patient guide, a very extensive patient guide. And they're getting this in advance of the appointment. It answers all their major questions. So we know that patients largely have fears about dentistry. They have all kinds of anxieties about it. Many people have had bad experiences with dentists. And unfortunately, they're coming to you as a new patient carrying all that baggage. They've got fears, they've got concerns, they've got anxieties, they've got questions. So we want to start the relationship, start the communication, start building rapport and trust with them before they get to the practice. Because the time to start that in the practice is not the correct time to start it, because we know at some point in time we're going to present a treatment plan to them and ask them for money. And this all happens at the start of the relationship. It's not a good way to start it. Once they come in for the exam, the cleaning, the treatment, and if they decide whatever reason not to go ahead with it, they leave the practice having not started the treatment plan. And that's where the next process in the follow-up starts. So once they've left, it kicks in then the smart follow-up sequence. And that consists of a video. And again, in the video are key psychological and emotional points about why it's important that they move forward with the treatment now rather than later. Also part of this follow-up process, they're going to receive a letter from the doctor, either digitally or mailed. There's also an automated email sequence that goes out to them. There's an automated postcard sequence, and the postcards can be sent digitally or physically. The key thing is to understand that there's an abundance of follow-up information that's coming to them. And it's not information that's asking them to make a new decision based on old information. It's about, again, providing them new information. It's really not different information that they've gotten, but it's just being presented in a new way, in a new light. All right. And it's started out, it's abundant early after the treatment has been presented, and then it gradually declines, it lessens over time. And the follow-up system actually stretches out to just about a 12-month period. So again, we're taking a position as an advisor with them rather than a salesperson. This is all engineered to get the patient to say yes to your treatment plan, or at the very least, to get them back into the office and having a conversation with you. Dentists tell me all the time that if they can get in front of the patient, they can get the treatment. So to use a baseball reference, this process gives you more swings at bat with the patient. The objective is to get a yes from them. Once they've said yes and they move forward with treatment and they complete treatment, they drop into the automated referral stimulus program. And the referral stimulus program includes a video. The video goes out and it works to nurture powerful and very useful referrals from them. Now, this is not like most referral programs that dentists may be familiar with. And I find that a lot of referral programs in the dental world are what I would consider passive. And again, I mentioned it earlier. I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of dental patients about their experiences with their dentist. And one of the questions that I regularly ask is, do you refer your doctor to friends, family, coworkers? And their answers are invariably yes. I then ask them, of the people you've referred, do you know if they've become a patient? To which most of the time their answer is I don't know. Now, this is a problem because we need to know if they're becoming a patient in the practice. So my referral program is really based on what we call lead generation. So we're asking the patient to refer someone to us. Give us a name, give us an email address, give us contact information. And on that patient's behalf, we're going to send them a very valuable guide of information, the patient guide. Now, this again goes towards leading, answering their questions. It's a matter of building rapport. It's a matter of differentiation. And the objective again of this is to get that patient that's been referred to call the practice and schedule an appointment. And as you can see from the system, it's cyclical. All we do is wash and repeat. The referred patient becomes the new patient, and the system goes to work on the new patient, all in an automated process.
Ron, I've never seen anything this extensive in follow-up.
Yeah.
I thought it's been needed. It's something I always wanted to do. How did it come about?
Well, in 2016, Dan Kennedy and I produced a program for Dr. Dustin Burleson, who's an orthodontist who operates 5 practices in Kansas City, Missouri. Dr. Burleson is a very smart marketer. And Dr. Burleson understood the business of dentistry, and he wanted to create a program to really standardize things. And that program became the basis of the Excellence in Orthodontics Area Exclusive Program for member orthodontists. And I know that there's people on our webinar now are probably familiar with that program. But at the core of that, Dr. Burleson recognized that there was a randomness to what was being said in preparing the patients before that actual buying decision, before they were faced with having to make a decision to invest money or not. So there's a very simple human element to this that is in every practice. And the mood of the doctor, the mood of the treatment coordinator that particular day has an effect on it. Are they reassuring, or at that particular time are they hurried and abrupt? There's a best presentation that must be delivered every time. That's big. So there's a most effective way to cover certain ideas and information, but humans are notoriously resistant to memorized scripts and rehearsed practice delivery. So we analyzed the presentations, and we found that there were wildly different kinds of presentations being given several times over different days. And to nobody's surprise, there were wildly different results. Some patients said yes, some patients said no. And that kind of randomness is really not a good thing for a business that must operate profitably. So there's a handful of key ideas that we found that must be presented in the right order at the right time and the best way possible before ever getting the patient to diagnosis, prescribing treatment, and then the fees, as well as then following up with the patients who don't move forward with treatment. This is more about emotional and psychological persuasion than it is about dentistry. When a patient initiates contact with a practice, they schedule an appointment, they receive a treatment presentation, their decision about all this is more about what's going on in their head than it is really about the mechanics of dentistry. Patients rarely dispute a dentist on what he or she is prescribing as treatment. Instead, they battle internally with how they're going to pay for it. Is it going to hurt? How long will it take? Will they be inconvenienced? Will they be away from work and family too much? So this is all the nonsense that's going on in their head. So from what we created for the orthos, I've adapted the 3 key components that are incredibly important for general dentists. This starts before the patient arrives in the practice, as I described, and then it goes through with everything else that we need to do in order to get them to accept treatment. So to set the stage here and understand really the importance of doing targeted, systematic follow-up, I want to talk about the habits of follow-up in generality. So not to single out anybody, I want to just use some research that was done by a Harvard Business Review study. Okay. Now I don't doubt that every practice is doing some form of follow-up. All right. But oftentimes a telephone call or something that's just casual contact. So in a Harvard Business Review study that released in March of 2011, this study is based on direct selling situations. So I want to put that caveat out there. And by definition, Direct selling is when a prospect is presented a buying opportunity and they are either saying yes or no. So a case presentation fits this category. A treatment is presented and the patient decides, do I want to proceed or not? Now, insurance and several other things complicate it, though for demonstration purposes here, let's just say the patient either decides to go ahead with treatment or not. So here's what was included in the study. Based on the study, working from left to right in this chart, after a presentation is made, 2% of patients or clients or prospects that don't move forward at the presentation, 2% of them are closed into the sale after the first contact in follow-up. 3% are moved into the sale after a second contact. 5% of the sales are made to the follow-up on the third contact. The fourth step generates 10% more in sales jump up just from a fourth contact. And here's the real eye opener. You can see it, how it jumps up there. 80% of those that say no turn around and say yes to the offer, to the presentation during the 5th through the 12th contact. Now let's contrast that. 48% of businesses don't do any kind of follow-up on a presentation whatsoever. Only 25% of them will make a second contact after the presentation, 2% a third contact, and 10% will do, lumped in, will do 3 or more steps. So the conclusion out of this is that not a lot of follow-up is being done. And frankly, your odds increase in converting a sale 90% just by doing 6 or more follow-ups. There's 2 important mechanisms at work here, and this is really important to understand. It's not just a matter of follow-up in and of itself. What's really at work here is what's called the mere exposure effect. The mere exposure effect is a documented psychological phenomenon where people will develop a preference for things merely because of their exposure to and their continued familiarity with it. Gustav Fechner conducted the earliest known research on this in 1876. Robert Zajonc proved the principle more recently in a controlled laboratory study. It was discovered that repeated exposure of a person to a stimulus, in this case a message or an idea, is enough condition for the enhancement of his or her attitude toward what they are exposed to. Now, the timing and the frequency of the exposure is in direct proportion to increasing a person's perception and strengthening the effect of the message and that it has on the recipient itself. Okay, so the mere exposure effect suggests that repeated exposure increases one's perceptual fluency toward it. This validates the value of implementing a sequential, content-rich follow-up system to patients. Now, content that is intended to lead them towards saying yes through the use of education and information. Again, new information upon which to make a new decision. With that constant response stimulus mechanism, the asking them to say yes or to move forward to contact the practice, or what we call a call to action, asking for the sale. It's asking them to move forward with treatment. So, again, if I digress for just a minute, it's providing patients new information upon which to make a new decision regarding their treatment. Second thing at work here, it's having the correct messages being communicated. So I mentioned this earlier. There is a most effective way to cover certain ideas and information. These messages must be communicated in the correct order and the correct way every time to eliminate randomness and increase measurable results. Because people are notorious for not wanting to follow choreographed messages and timing, I accomplish this through media, using media. It's about doing consistently what's proven to be successful. And really, there's no honor to becoming a successful dentist, operating and relying on spontaneity. Successful dental procedures are founded in systems and planning. So why wouldn't you want to do a planned, systematic follow-up? Why would you want to do anything differently? So really, this is the foundation of my entire smart patient follow-up system. Now, let me be clear here. In the term follow-up, it refers to the communication with patients after each step in their contact with the practice based on the next step needing to be taken to move that patient toward a decision or action. And bear with me, I'm almost done here. I know this is a long-winded answer on a very simple question, Larry, but here's why the system works. It's not a replacement of anything the practice is doing, but it's an enhancement to it. It's more touches, more engagement with that patient. It builds rapport and it strengthens relationship. People buy from people they know, like, and trust. And trust is gained by becoming familiar. Secondly, it removes the need to sell or feel like treatment is being sold. It automates communication of the key information at the appropriate points in the relationship. So if you think about personal relationships, someone's not likely to get somebody to accept a marriage proposal before or on the first date. It's kind of an odd comparison, but really that's what's happening here. We're asking them to buy on the first date. And this leverages that mere exposure effect or the familiarity effect that I described.
It all makes sense, Ron. But for clarification, would you mind walking me through the tangibles included in your system?
Sure. It really is a collection of short, subject-specific videos about choosing the best dentist, as well as powerful referral tools. Now, these are professionally scripted and produced, simple message videos that can be used online, at the practice's website, pushed to patients through the mail or FedEx. They can be played in the reception room, and they can be distributed on DVD.
You've talked about preparing the patient for their first visit, for example.
Yeah, that's right. This is a longer video. It addresses the key items. It's differentiation and specialization about price and value, the emotional and physical health issues involved with dentistry, and the importance of acting now, not later. We really spent a lot of time in developing this message. This is done successfully in several other professions and industries for pre-sale situations in like real estate, financial services, investments, physical therapy, and on and on. The job of this video is really to make the doctor's job and the treatment coordinator's job easier. This avoids the practice being dependent on one superstar human to do all the real selling work and all the closing work, whether that's the doctor or the treatment coordinator. Again, this is media as reduction of manual labor and all the variables that carries with it. So I have a brief example here, Larry. I want to play an excerpt from the pre-consult video. So give me a second and I'll change over so that we can play that video, and then I'll come back in.
Okay.
You might be surprised what patients will tell us when sitting in the chair, which, by the way, stays private. The perception and appearance in social situations, in the workplace and elsewhere, is a pretty important thing for success in life. We're already having sort of a desocialization by, of all things, social media. We don't need people to feel like hiding out because they're ashamed of their smile. This is serious stuff. Shaming and bullying, not only with kids but adults as well, has real consequences. This is about life, not just about crooked or straight teeth, a bad or a good smile. There are a lot of reasons people worry about seeing a dentist. They may insist a faulty smile is no big deal, when it really is. One is fear that treatment will be painful. You may remember a personal experience with a well-intentioned dentist that went horribly wrong. Things in dentistry have changed a lot. Not only are there methods and techniques available to minimize and eliminate the discomfort, there are safe and comfortable digital x-rays, invisible orthodontics, and other breakthroughs in dentistry. Of course, that pain-free thing and access to the best technology depends on choosing the right dentist. Another reason people are nervous about a dental examination and assessment is that they think the treatment and procedures will cost too much, so why bother with an exam? But insurance coverage and a variety of financing options can make needed care absolutely affordable for any patient, with payments tailored to the household budget as needed. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Running a household and raising a family is an expensive proposition. Providing first-class dental care to you and your family is important. Surely something you want, particularly if you didn't get it. But it does have to be paid for, and concerns are understandable. Nothing you discuss with the dentist or a treatment coordinator ever leaves the office. Most of us have families and budget issues too. We're not Martians after all. We're people just like you. Another worry is that it's going to require too much time off work, away from work or business, or that your child or children will miss too much school or activities. We go out of our way to extend hours and to schedule around your schedule for a minimum of absences, if any. Modern technology and great products and procedures reduce the term of care and the number of appointments. Finally, there are people who have had a bad experience or two with dentists or doctors. You may have been talked to discourteously, hurried, kept waiting way beyond appointment times, and otherwise, frankly, abused. Or you may have experienced pain. Even a hurried or indifferent hygienist can cause pain, let alone the dentist. Dr. Scapolato knows what it's like to be in the chair. Remember, he's a dental patient too. Today, with a great dentist, there really is no reason for you not to have a straight, clean, easy to care for, healthy smile, and the confidence that comes with it. And no reason not to do it now, rather than indecisively postpone it.
And that was the one for a pre-consult video.
That's correct.
But what about the patient who's presented treatment but doesn't accept on the initial visit? Do you have one for that too?
I do. As I've indicated, this is one of the most overlooked areas for lost patients in any practice. It's what I call that appointment no sale patient. Now, that's to say that it's a patient who's responded to the advertising, they've scheduled and showed up for an appointment, they've received an exam, they've got an assessment, and they've been prescribed a treatment plan, but they don't proceed with the procedure. So this is a huge source of lost patients, lost business, and lost money. Virtually no practice addresses this fully, and it's a huge area of opportunity in every practice. And it's one of those things that they'll go about doing it randomly because it's added work oftentimes for their staff. It's worth noting, before I show you the appointment no sale video, an excerpt here. In the program, there's two versions of this follow-up video. One version speaks to the new patient who's recently received a treatment presentation. The second version, it speaks to the patient who's received a treatment plan some time ago. So it's lost treatment that's languishing in the database of undone treatment in practice. What I found in the research is that the average dental practice has between $500,000 and $1 million in undone treatment, from which a percentage of that can easily and reliably be reactivated. So there's two components to this follow-up, of this appointment no sale. So let me show you an excerpt from that.
Sent to her email address shown here. If I may, there are usually just several reasons that people do not go ahead with their treatment. I'd like to talk with you briefly about some of them for the next few minutes. American humorist Mark Twain advised, "The secret of getting ahead is getting started." Sometimes getting started is hard. A lot of patients tell us that the hardest part of their entire experience and journey to a new, healthier, spectacular smile was making the decision to start. They're often surprised by this after the fact because they held any number of imagined fears or anxieties about what was going to take place, or they questioned the appropriateness of spending the sum of money required. I promise you, the benefits of a beautiful smile and the confidence and the acceptance by others that comes with it are much greater than you can imagine. These benefits last a lifetime and pay dividends every day. Your positive decision about this can easily be one of the best decisions you'll make for yourself, and one you'll be thankful you did. We understand the financial considerations. Keep in mind two very important points, though. You're really making an investment in you and your future. And don't confuse price with value. What is the real value of your self-esteem and confidence? You're probably paying more for smartphones, TV, and internet each and every year than it would cost to put in motion the treatment plan that was recommended to you. If you have 4 family members' smartphones on a typical T-Mobile, Verizon, or AT&T plan, you're probably paying $180 or more per month. If you have cable TV, DirecTV, pay-per-view, Netflix, and Amazon Prime, you're topping another $180 a month easily. Truth is, we all have a number of these $180 a month expenses, and none are helpful to your health, well-being, esteem, or career. We pay some of them habitually and thoughtlessly. On the other hand, the dental treatment you were presented can be made affordable. The office has several different plans for financing the treatment. Additionally, most treatment plans are staged, which means they happen in steps or stages, depending on your situation. This too makes the treatment affordable. Unlike the monthly cell phone and membership costs, the investment for your dental treatment stops. Those others are endless. And while the monthly investment for treatment ends, the benefits purchased with it are profound and last a lifetime. If you shop around, you may find other dentists offering what seems like the same treatment options, even named the same, or using the same resources. Still, all treatment is not the same. Not all dental practices approach creating the ideal smile in the same way. As a somewhat limited but still useful analogy, consider bringing someone in to paint the interior of your home. I might say, paint is paint. To a great degree, that's true. And you might find several different painting contractors all using the very same paint, yet creating different results and requiring different prices for the same project. In choosing one over the others, you'll likely consider any number of factors, including their reputation and what their clients have to say about them. Before and after pictures of their work, their experience, their guarantees, and your assessment of their sincere interest in what they do. Are they really interested in creating the most beautiful, most perfect look for your home? Or just about getting paint on walls as quickly as possible? You'll probably be even rightfully suspicious of anyone offering too cheap of a price. You'll know they'll be under pressure to take shortcuts and compromise along the way. You will judge their attitude in their conversations with you. You won't say to yourself, well, paint is paint. They're all using the same paint, and they're all doing the same thing, putting paint on walls. So, what's the difference? Well, you know there is a difference. Here, we're talking about something considerably more important and more technically complex than paint on walls. Dr. Scapolato does not think of himself as a technician, like a mechanic, or like a painter. He is about transforming lives, your life, not just treating teeth for a winning smile and lifelong optimal health, but for supporting a winning personality and confident attitude. This is a very special X factor you'll appreciate. It's only natural to be concerned that the dental examination, assessment, and treatment procedure will cost too much.
Okay, Ron, you also mentioned something about referrals.
Yeah, they're an important part. And when I get the numbers from practices, I see that some of their largest, the majority of their new patients are coming for referrals from referral sources. And this is really an important part for a practice. You know, the more thoroughly and satisfied and confident that a patient is with the way that they've made their decision and the reasons why they made it, the more enthused they are about actually the outcomes, and the more readily they are about referring the practice in greater numbers. So the back end effect of this and the other enhancements to the new patient buying process can easily boost referral rates by double-digit percentages. Again, it's worth noting, just like with the appointment no sale video, and that's not what we call it to the patient, but there are two versions of the referral video. One speaks to the patient from a newly completed treatment, so a new patient, and the second is speaking to existing patients who've been with the practice for a while. They've not referred or they haven't referred regularly. So again, let me just play a brief excerpt from that video as well.
Sure, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tim Friedman with a request for a favor for your dentist, maybe one they've been personally hesitant about asking for. I'll get right to the point. Although your treatment was successfully completed, you have not referred any patients, and we know you must know other people in need of a great dentist. We know the hurdle for referring friends, family, and coworkers can be high. I often hesitate myself to recommend a restaurant that I think is fantastic, for fear they'll be less than that when my friend goes there. And then I'll never hear the end of it. And choosing a dentist is obviously a much more complicated thing to do than to pick a restaurant for a Friday night. This is complicated, and the consequences of a bad decision can be so significant. It is for that reason we hope you will tell your friends about your dentist and practice. We've all seen celebrities who wound up with less than terrific plastic surgery. You can name some. And you wonder, how could someone with all the money in the world to spend, living in the beauty capital of Hollywood, make a poor choice and get such a bad outcome. But it just isn't easy to be sure. Many surgeons, like many dentists, can seem the same. You only really know after the fact. And that is where you are now. You know. So you can do a friend, family member, or coworker a big favor and do a nice thing for your dentist too. But how? During our new patient drive, we've made it pretty easy. We have some very useful free information we'd like to send with your compliments to anybody you recommend. Would you please take just a few minutes now to participate? The lifeblood of the practice is the referrals that come from great patients like you. If he could clone you with a magic cloning machine, believe me, you'd never see any advertising for the practice. I know that's how the dentist and the entire team feel about you, or you wouldn't have been chosen to receive this video. Of course, whoever you have the free information sent to will, if they decide to come into the office, be taken care of in the same professional and caring way you were. If they become patients, they'll have the same guarantees you do. They will certainly thank you for sharing what you know that they couldn't know in advance. Please call the practice and refer a friend, family member, or coworker today.
Okay, Ron, but aren't there other digital and print materials too?
Yes, as part of the program, after the video and the follow-up, there's a letter that goes to the patient from the doctor. Now, it's written for the doctor in his or her voice, and it represents a personal message to the patient from the doctor. I've never heard of anything like this being done, but it really creates a personal connection with patients. In addition to that, there's a series of emails sent to the patients over, like I said, about a 12-month period. And there's also several postcards that the practice can use that can be mailed out, or they can be sent digitally. So any of the materials can be used in digital or in physical form.
Well, I'm curious, why not send the materials exclusively by digital means?
Really, with today's society practically living online, that's a big reason that I recommend using what some will perceive as old media. So the issue here is not about what media to use. Rather, it's the equity that we gain from it. For it to be effective, patients must consume the information. Putting everything online or at a website requires the patient to fetch it. If that's the only thing we do, somebody's got to go somewhere to watch it, read it, and consume it. And let's face it, people live their lives and their time is very, very complicated and it's occupied. And everything online is being consolidated. To truly be persuasive with a patient, you cannot present a case effectively in a 140-word tweet, nor can you be sure that somebody's going to go and watch or read the damn thing. However, when a DVD, a letter from the doctor, or postcards show up at their home via the U.S. Postal Service or FedEx, it carries importance. So I want you to think about something. How do you feel when a package arrives at your house? There's curiosity around it. FedEx created that, and Amazon has enhanced it. The other thing is that the physical media occupies valuable real estate in their home. Now, you and I get hundreds of texts and emails every day. How many of those can you conceivably give the proper attention to? The DVD or the mail, it occupies space sitting on their counter. It's a consistent reminder that they have a desire to want to create a new, more confident self. That same video linked only in an email will be lost in virtual purgatory 10 minutes after it's received. And nobody's going to go looking for it later, the next day or even a week later. They're going to forget about it. It's going to be lost and forgotten. You'll have potentially wasted time, effort, and money on a highly effective, highly persuasive tool. And the third reason I do it, or I recommend it be done this way, is because no other doctor is doing it. Really, why are people sending emails only? They're doing it to save money. That's to say that digital, it's not to say that digital won't only work. I mean, if we're doing it only digital, it won't work. It will. Doing digital only with the right messages in the right order and the sequence and the duration, it increases the practice's conversion of those opportunities. But adding the physical components increases that opportunity immensely. There's a direct correlation to the amount of money that you invest and the amount of time that your patient invests consuming the material directly related to the amount of money that you'll make from them. So in short, the more time they invest with you, the more likely they are to say yes to you. Again, this is the mere exposure effect at work. Now, this isn't a pie in the sky kind of idea or concept. It's based on over 140 years of psychological studies. Really, in the most basic terms, you spend money to make money. The practice that incorporates mailing the media increases their exposure and the odds of converting more treatment. Physical media isn't easily thrown away. It carries a perceived value like books do. I mean, it's physical. It's an invested value.
Ron, what do you mean by invested?
Well, Larry, a patient knows when they receive this stuff, it costs money to produce. So on an unconscious level, it communicates to those people that you, who's sending it, is investing in the patient, that you are different than all the other practices that that patient may be investigating. This is an unspoken, unconscious communication. It's powerful communication for just a few dollars investment.
But wouldn't it also communicate that the practice might be expensive? Maybe it means that the procedures will be expensive?
Well, to the wrong patient, yes. Though to the right patient, the one who has the means and is motivated to, no. It's actually going to have the opposite effect. You can't expect valuable patients to invest with you until you're willing to invest in them over and above the time and skill that you have to bring them.
All right. So you have as number one the collection of short subject-specific videos, the pre-consultation video, the videos for follow-up that we saw, an undone treatment for both new and existing treatment presented, the referrals to both new and existing patients, the email sequence, and the print media pieces. Before continuing, can I get a frame of reference to what all this would cost?
Sure, and that's an important question. The program that we produced for the orthodontist with Dr. Burleson, for Dan Kennedy and my involvement, the investment was over $250,000 to produce that whole program. Now, the components that I've borrowed from it and adapted for this program that are applicable really to the general dentist is in the $125,000 ballpark. That's based on Dan Kennedy or another A-list direct response writer, me, and the vast amount of research, analysis, the pulling and crafting of the best practices for the media, and the production of those materials. It's more than the average practice could afford to invest on its own. My program really marries a solo practice with the kind of high-level, sophisticated marketing that the big companies have access to at about a 90% discount. Now, frankly, Larry, I don't really anticipate just any dentist to really appreciate all of this and to appreciate the associative power that's baked into it. It'll take a pretty progressive and sophisticated doctor to understand the true and total value. I think I've assembled and am delivering something exceptional and exceptionally valuable.
Well, tell me, are the materials customized for each participating doctor? For example, are the videos filmed at the practice with the doctor?
No, they're not filmed with the doctor or at the practice, and there's really two chief reasons for this. First, practical logistics and costs. As I described, this would be priced out of reach to the average practice by doing that. The difficulty and the cost really outweigh the benefit. So this programming is standardized. The second reason is more positioning related. As you saw from the examples in the excerpts, the practice is represented, the doctor is represented in the video by a spokesperson. The use of a spokesperson in place of the doctor creates a unique positioning for what we communicate on the doctor's behalf. It really allows us to say things to the patients that, frankly, the doctor and his or her staff would be uncomfortable saying, but it's absolutely critical that it be said. So by appearing as if the message is made for Dr. Smith, its endorsement of Dr. Smith has stronger influence. That's the thinking, at least. Of course, any practice is really free to separately film and provide a close or an open and close to the videos that can be added to the existing content if they feel inclined. Now, really think about it this way. It's like what AARP does. When they have a non-celebrity person who steps forward in the ads, which in turn is really just peddling United Health's insurance. He's a representative of the organization. If the same doctor appears in the ads as a representative of United Health, he's then a salesperson. So this is important. This is really as important as it is about what's being said. This is what we call mind hijacking. It flips a switch in the consumer's mind. The authoritative spokesperson voice is received differently than is the individual doctor's voice on the information and message we're sending. It's the same message, but received differently. The mind is literally hijacked just by the insertion of the spokesperson. With regard to the customization, the media and the materials, though, are branded to the practice and the doctor. So, for example, throughout the videos that you saw, the practice and the doctor are referenced by the spokesperson in the copy in voiceover. The background that we use, that it's behind the spokesperson, is chosen by the doctor. Now, this can be from a library of images that we provide, or it can be the doctor's office. It could be their waiting room and we can lay it in the background. So it has the perception that it is, again, representing the doctor. The other materials used in print or digital, such as the postcard or the patient guide, those are all customized with the practice and the doctor's name and their identity. So once again, this would all be too expensive for a doc to do on their own. When I produced this program for Dr. Burleson in conjunction with Dan Kennedy, it carried a pretty heavy price tag, and that was for Dan's and my involvement. Only through a joint effort is this really affordable. So again, this allows the solo doc to step up to the big leagues and have what the big boys have at about a 90% discount.
Is this a done-for-you program, or do you hand the materials to the practice to implement, Ron?
It's a done-for or a done-with program, okay? So that's to say that we customize all the media and the materials. The doctor can have my team set up the system and implement the program, or we can hand the materials to the doctor's team. Now, naturally, most docs have us do it for them. I mean, the doctor and the staff's skill and time is really dedicated to doing the dentistry, not the selling of it. Frankly, most doctors and staff don't really like the icky parts of dentistry that are associated with talking about money. With media, I'm removing the labor involved required to appropriately prepare a patient for the experience and the presentation, as well as eliminating the arduous labor and skill that's required after the presentation to convert that patient to a case.
Okay, I understand all that. But in simplest terms, how does the program generate production and make the doctor some money?
That's really the crux of what we're getting to. So it really increases the value of the patient before coming to the first appointment, to that consultation. If you think of it like Disney, if anybody's ever vacationed at Disney World in Florida or Disneyland in California, if you've booked a vacation and you're staying at a Disney resort and you've bought tickets to Disney, you know that you start receiving information and you start receiving content via email, via online video, via the mail, via FedEx packages and so forth. You start receiving this stuff from Disney before you ever get to the park, before you get to the vacation. And Disney has shown, their empirical data reports that by doing this, guests will spend 40% more than they ever budgeted to spend in going to the park. So it's important that we prepare them for all that they're going to experience. The other thing is the conversion of that treatment after a presentation is done. Thirdly, it's the conversion of all the old treatment. When I say old treatment, it's old treatment that's been presented and you have it in your database. Now, this could be a month, 2 months, 6 months, 12 months out. It's also from the referral stimulation by using lead capture, a more direct response oriented approach to referrals, capturing a lead, capturing a prospective patient, and then taking it upon ourselves to send them this valuable information on behalf of the patient referring them. This is very important to capture that information. We're building lists. We're building the permission to follow up and market to these people who we would normally wait for them to find us through traditional paths. This is us going out, reaching out, grabbing them, and trying to bring them into the practice.
Well, I think that leads us to the discussion of investment. How much does the program cost, Ron?
First, understand this is a licensing arrangement for use of the program and the materials. The investment includes customizing all the program materials with the practice's name, doctor name, brand, and identity. All that is included in the first year's licensing. Now, you can see here, I think the doctors are pleasantly surprised it doesn't cost as much as they might think. I know because when I consult with doctors privately, I tell them the investment and they tell me they're surprised by it. So it also might interest people to know that I kind of view this as a long-term play. It's an area dentists have long needed help with and support with. And my heart's really been with dentists starting way back with my family dentist. So the first year's investment is $12,500. I think it's pretty easy to spend $10,000 or $20,000 on a website or a direct mail print advertising piece. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, a past president spent $834 million on the Obamacare website. More recently, the former governor of Florida spent $77 million updating the Florida's unemployment website. If you add up everything included in this, attach even the modest creative and production fees to each of them, you're easily going to find yourself above $50,000 or more. More importantly, that would be without Dan Kennedy having written it and without me having produced it, and all the advanced research, analysis, and testing that's gone into it. The other way to look at this, though, is the classic ROI question. How many cases must you get? When you consider this program is operating on many fronts, the proper preparation of the new patient entering the practice, it's rendering them more susceptible to case presentation, then effectively and systematically working on converting lost treatment, both from the new patient treatment presented and the idle ones that are on the books, and then a more robust, assertive, direct response style referral program. Obviously, you don't need many cases to offset the investment. And further, I'll just add that by seeing what's done and how it's done and paying attention, you're getting a great education in marketing and in sales psychology. This is also a seat license, which means that it guarantees you right of first refusal on any subsequent programs that extend or replace it. And oftentimes people will ask, is there any additional cost other than the upfront investment? No and yes. If the doctor has a direct response style digital marketing software that's capable of delivering digital communications in a systematic, pre-scheduled, predetermined sequence, then no. But it's been my experience that most dental management softwares don't really have the capability needed to do this kind of marketing. Therefore, I incorporate a simple, user-friendly, marketing-rich third-party system to deliver the media. We take care of all the setup and the import portals. The monthly investment on a system like that is based on how many names and email addresses are put into it. For example, a database of up to 10,000 names can be as high as $90 a month. But most practices won't need something that big, especially when they start out. As for inputting the data into the portals that we set up, which trigger the follow-up, someone within the practice can input the data of new appointments, undone treatment, and lost treatment, or we can provide a data person for the practice. Again, that's a small investment for a clerical person on a weekly or a monthly basis. That's all at the doctor's discretion. Should the practice choose to use the physical media components, they mail out the patient guide or the postcards and the letters and so forth, the investment for printing and mailing of those materials would be extra and is based on time and media costs for what's sent. Now, I have trusted and vetted resources that can handle this load for the doctor if they decide to go that route. In either event, the investment is minimal, and better yet, the workload is removed from the doctor and the staff if they want to do it that way. And most of my clients choose to do that. They want the done for them option. They prefer not adding more work to their or their staff's workload. I'd like to offer something to doctors who may be considering this that could be helpful. All business challenges are solved with math. To simplify the math on this, to decide if this will be profitable for a practice, if it makes sense to do or not, there are really only 4 numbers to consider. Number 1, your new patient flow. 2, the case value per patient. 3, How much value in undone treatment is there available to you that's been presented in the last 12 months that hasn't been converted to production? And 4, the percentage of cases that you're closing on now. Now, I warn you, you've got to be honest with yourself about these numbers. Trust the data, don't just make a wild-ass guess about it. If you also add the lifetime value generated from each new case, plus an endless chain of referrals from those, then your ROI from this increases dramatically, rapidly. The second thing I want to say is that the independent dentist should be concerned about what the future holds for them as a solo practice, notwithstanding what we're experiencing right now. I mean, dentistry has become an occupational hazard. I know the doctors that I work, stress levels are going through the roof. In fact, they've been documented at about 83 to 86% of dentists are having more stress than other people in the health industry. The Center of Disease Control ranked healthcare workers among the 10 on the list of the top 30 occupations likely to commit suicide. And I'm sure it's even higher now considering our existing circumstances. A dentist's income continues to decline at a rate of about 11% annually. Collections have dropped 8% since 2008, and they continue to decline nationally. Overhead is getting out of hand. Currently, it's on average about 75%. The Levin Group reports that practices lose on average 15% of their patients each year to increased competition and changing insurance plans. If for no other reason, this is an important number, is its attrition. The recall frequencies have gone from 6 months to 11 months. It's costing more, and it's becoming more difficult to attract new patients. Practices have a backlog of undone treatment that they can work from. Also, and this is one that dentists have little control over. Dentistry has been what I call Amazoned. That's to say that non-dental entities are entering into the dental space. The DSOs, the teledentistry, Walmart just got into it about 6 to 8 months ago. And soon, if you don't think so, but Amazon is going to get into this field. And lastly, the average practice has, as I mentioned earlier, between $500,000 and $1 million in pending treatment. So with all that said, based on my experience, I find there are really 3 types of doctors at this point. The first type of doctor is the doctor who has the new patient flow. They've got the database of undone treatment that's been presented but not closed. It's in their database. They have a high enough case value to quickly offset this program, and they recognize the value in automating the process, and they want to be ready to go with this program once the practice opens and is operating again. They're ready to commit to the investment. So that's doctor number 1. Doctor number 2, they have the new patient flow. They've got the database of undone treatment. They've got the case values high enough, and they recognize the value of this program, but they're really not ready to commit the funds to it. What they want to do is they want to wait. They want to see what happens. So I've put together basically like a seat licensing agreement. Now, it's not an obligation for dentists to invest. Rather, it's their right of first refusal when the practice opens again and they're operating. And third type of doctor is one that may not have the new patient flow. They don't have the database of undone treatment, and they don't have a high enough per case value, or they just don't recognize the value of this program in their practice. So what do you do next? If you're doctor number 1, you're ready to go and you want to get this implemented. Go to the URL, schedule a call with me, and we'll discuss the key elements for getting started. You'll receive a licensing agreement. Sign and return it, and your smart patient follow-up system will get created and customized. If you're doctor number 2, you want to get started, though you're not quite ready to fully commit yet. Maybe you haven't been given the clearance to go ahead and open the practice and get started, and you must get things in place and then open and start practicing. I understand that. If this is you, then you want a place in line. There is a $199 fully refundable reservation fee to hold your place in my schedule. That means on the date that you specify, we'll have a follow-up phone call to discuss moving forward or not going ahead with this. The $199 is not a financial commitment to the program, rather holding your place in line in my schedule. The $199 is 100% fully refundable. If you're doctor number 3, it's not for you, then you do nothing. There's some key information that I'll need to get from you if you're doctor number 1 or doctor number 2. I've set up a dedicated web link for you to schedule a call with me. If you're doctor number 1, you see the value in this program and you're ready to commit and get it implemented immediately. Or if you're doctor number 2, you see the value, but you're not ready to commit the funds, but you want right of first refusal and you'll have front-of-the-line access for implementation. Go to the URL shown here. There, you're going to set up a private phone call with me. At the scheduled day and time, we'll discuss which you are, if you're doctor number 1 or doctor number 2. I'll get the pertinent information and I'll send you the appropriate agreement via FedEx. When you receive it, sign it and return it to me. If you're doctor number 1, we're going to get started customizing your program and getting the key components branded and customized for you and your practice. If you're doctor number 2, you will set your next step call with me, at which time you decide if you want to proceed with this program or not. If you decide at that time to proceed, your $199 investment is applied to the program licensing. If you decide not to proceed, the $199 will be refunded, no questions asked. The $199 fee is not a financial commitment to the program, only a placeholder commitment. This gives you front-of-the-line status. The great American humorist Mark Twain advised, "The secret of getting ahead is just getting started." Sometimes the hardest part is just getting started. A lot of dentists tell me that the hardest part of their entire experience was making the decision to start. They're often surprised by any number of things because they held any number of imagined fears or anxieties about it. If after this webinar you have any unasked or unanswered questions, please take the doctor number 2 position and schedule that call with me. On that call, we can discuss your situation privately and determine if you're doctor number 1, doctor number 2, or 3. There's no obligation. The important thing is to decide whether this is for you or not for you. Being on the fence is no place to be. The deciding factor should be your degree of seriousness about success as you define it. I've shared a lot of data and a lot of information with you on this webinar. However, don't be fooled. Information alone gets you only so far. Taking notes will only get you so far. I'm sure that you have a place in your office, in your home, or in your garage where the notes from all the other seminars and webinars have piled up. All the while you've had great intentions of going back to those notes, but they collect dust and they get piled under with more notes from more seminars and more webinars. You can get only so far by study alone, only so far in isolation. The number one way to make big leaps up and forward is through commitment and action. So if you are truly serious about making a big leap, then this is for you. Go to the URL, schedule a private call with me. If you have any unasked or unanswered questions, we're going to discuss them on that call. You certainly can't doubt or question the value presented here. You can only question yourself and your ability to take action. Only one thing's for sure. Your business won't grow in isolation or do so by doing the same things that you've done before. It's a gut decision. Does this sound right for you? If yes, schedule the call with me right now. I'm going to get very busy when everything really gets back into full swing and the country opens and businesses get going again, because this is a unique approach. It's one that the big boys and the other practices in your area will not do. Now, you have the advantage of an inside early exposure to this, so don't squander that. If this is for you, let's get started. At the very least, let's have a conversation. Go to the URL now and schedule your call.